Through a bizarre twist of fate, I somehow ended up becoming the sugar daddy of my beautiful female boss. Just because her WeChat profile picture looked exactly like my sister's, I accidentally transferred all of my sister's living expenses to her instead. A massive fortune of $500 a month, I transferred it to her for 5 whole months. After hesitating again and again, I finally decided that no matter how powerful she was, I had to reclaim what belonged to me. However, I thought that with her $1 million annual salary, there was no way she would care about such a small amount of money from me. But not only did she refuse to return it, she even started telling me about the pain and trauma of her dysfunctional family background. With tears in her eyes, she said, "The reason I accepted the money is because I've always wished I had an older brother who would send me allowance too." Damn it. Not only was she refusing to return the money, now she was clinging to me too. As for me, I only had one thing to say: hell no, give me my money back. Chapter 1. At the dinner table, Lillian was completely absorbed in gnawing on a chicken wing. My mom placed another piece of pork rib into her bowl and nagged, "Look how skinny you've gotten. Does your school cafeteria not feed people?" I eat. Lillian mumbled vaguely through her food before suddenly looking up at me. "Bro, did you block me recently or something?" My chopsticks paused midair. "No." "Why?" "Then why'd you stop sending me spending money?" She put down the chicken wing and started counting on her fingers. "You haven't transferred me a single cent since September. Didn't you promise to send me $500 every month?" My dad chimed in. "Your brother barely makes enough as it is. $500 a month is already generous. Don't push your luck." "But we already agreed on it," Lillian protested. She pulled out her phone and showed me the screen. "Look, the last transfer was on August 27th. After that, nothing." Instinctively, I opened WeChat and checked my transfer history. September, 500. October, 500. November, 500. December, 600. I'd added an extra 100 because I thought she needed winter clothes. January, 500. Every transaction was there, crystal clear, but when I looked closer, the recipient wasn't my sister, it was Willow, my direct supervisor, head of RD department too. Willow. My finger hovered over her profile picture, a cartoon orange cat, exactly the same as Lillian's. Back when I first added Willow on WeChat, I'd even thought it was a funny coincidence. I remember joking to myself that the two of them must have some weird fate connecting them. Now I couldn't laugh anymore. 5 months, 2,600, all transferred to my female boss. "Bro." Lillian waved a hand in front of me. "Why does your face look so pale?" "It's nothing." I locked my phone screen. "I probably transferred it to the wrong person before. I'll make it up to you later." "The wrong person? Who'd you send it to?" I rubbed my nose awkwardly. "A coworker." Lillian let out an "oh" and didn't ask further. I stuffed a piece of tofu into my mouth, but my brain had already exploded. 2,600. Willow accepted every single transfer without saying a word, not even a question mark. Was that normal? No, absolutely not. I desperately tried recalling whether Willow's attitude toward me had changed at all during the past 5 months. In September, she asked me to grab coffee for her once. Before that, she'd never sent me on errands. In October, during a department dinner, she sat beside me for the first time on her own initiative. In November, a project ran into trouble. It was clearly my screw-up, but she covered for me during the meeting. In December, during the annual performance review, she gave me an A. And in January, just last month, we worked overtime until 1 in the morning, and she ordered late-night food for me. I thought she was just a good boss, but now that I looked back on everything, cold sweat broke out all over my body. She couldn't possibly think I was trying to pursue her, right? Sending her $500 every month, like clockwork. Didn't that basically look like a subscription-style sugar arrangement? "George, stop eating already," my mom said as she reached over to feel my forehead. "Are you running a fever? Your face keeps turning red and white." "Feeling guilty," I replied. "No, I'm just tired." I quickly shoveled the rest of the rice into my mouth, returned to my room, and started scrolling through my chat history with Willow. Other than work messages, the conversation was spotless. 5 transfers. She accepted every one of them. No replies. No refunds. No thank yous. Nothing at all. I stared at that orange cat profile picture on my screen for a full 3 minutes. Chapter 2. It was already the 4th day of Lunar New Year. Only 3 more days before I had to return to work. 3 days. I needed to figure out a way to smooth this whole thing over. Option 1. Play dumb. Something like, "Manager Lou, my sister has the same profile picture as you, so I accidentally transferred the money to you. Could you send it back?" But that sounded exactly like a guy trying to take back money he'd willingly given away. Option 2. Say nothing at all. Pretend none of this ever happened and just make sure I never transferred money to the wrong person again. But what if she really had misunderstood my intentions? My phone vibrated. A message from Willow. "Lou, George, did you go back to your hometown?" At 11 o'clock at night, your boss suddenly messages you. Before this, I would have assumed it was about work. Now, I genuinely couldn't tell anymore, I replied. Yes, Manager Lou. I got home on the second day of New Year. Get some good rest. That was it. In the past, I would have locked my phone and gone straight to sleep. But tonight, I stared at those 3 words, get some good rest, over and over again. 8 times. Get some good rest. Was she just being polite? Or was she actually concerned about me? I placed the phone face down on my nightstand and closed my eyes. I was screwed. I didn't think I could face Willow normally anymore. Early the next morning, Lillian pushed open my bedroom door. Bro, did you transfer me $500 last night? Yeah, I replied, making up for the missing months. She asked, did the person you accidentally sent the money to pay you back yet? Not yet. Then hurry up and ask for it back. That's over $2,000. She sat beside my bed before asking curiously, was it a male coworker or a female coworker? A woman. Lillian's expression instantly changed. Whoa, a female coworker. You sent $500 to the same woman every month, for 5 months. I already told you. It was an accident. She narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Even if it was an accident, why wouldn't she return the money? She looked at me with the expression of someone who thought they'd uncovered the truth. Brother, don't tell me you're keeping a. Shut up. I pressed a hand against her forehead and shoved her away. Don't start imagining nonsense. She lifted her chin proudly. I'm warning you, if Mom finds out about this, if you tell Mom, you're never getting allowance from me again. She snorted and shuffled out in her slippers. The moment the door closed, I heard her mutter, scumbag. I wasn't a scumbag. I was just an idiot. Chapter 3. On the 5th day of Lunar New Year, I didn't leave the house. Same thing on the 6th day. For 2 whole days. I scrolled through Willow's WeChat moments from beginning to end. She barely posted anything, maybe once every 3 months. Her most recent post was on New Year's Day, a nighttime city view taken from a window, captioned with a single word, New Year. 4 people had liked it. No comments. I noticed one detail immediately. The photo had clearly been taken from a high-rise building. You could see the entire CBD skyline stretched out below. So she lived in one of those luxury apartments on the east side of the city. Compared to the 4-person shared apartment I rented in the urban village district, forget it. No point comparing. I closed moments and started thinking about what I should do once work resumed. Plan A, confess face-to-face. Explain that I transferred the money by mistake, and ask for it back. Pros, straightforward. Cons, if she never misunderstood things in the first place, bringing it up would only make everything awkward. Plan B, send her a WeChat message explaining the mistaken transfers and wait for her to refund me. Pros, no face-to-face embarrassment. Cons, she could pretend she never saw it. Plan C, say nothing and let the whole thing go. Pros, no awkwardness. Cons, I'd lose $2,600. $2,600. My monthly salary after taxes was only $6,800. That money was equal to 11.5 days of work. There was no way I could just forget about it. In the end, I chose Plan B. On the 7th day of Lunar New Year, I headed back to the city. While riding the high-speed train, I rewrote the message more than 20 times before finally sending it. Hello, Manager Lou. Some of the previous transfers were sent to you by mistake due to an operational error. Sorry for the trouble. The moment I sent it, I shoved my phone into my bag and told myself I'd ignore it for the next 2 hours. 3 minutes later, I pulled it back out. Read. No reply. 10 more minutes passed. Still nothing. Half an hour later, my phone rang. Not a WeChat message, a voice call. From Willow. I nearly threw my phone across the train carriage. The passenger beside me glanced over. I took a deep breath and answered. Manager Lou. George. Her voice was calm and flat. Impossible to read. What exactly do you mean by operational error? I swallowed nervously. My little sister has the same WeChat profile picture as you. I didn't notice before. So the allowance money I meant to send her ended up going to you. Silence. 2 whole seconds. Then she asked. The orange cat. Yes. Another 2 seconds of silence. Then Willow said something I absolutely wasn't expecting. I know. My brain blanked out. What? The first time I received the transfer, I already knew you sent it to the wrong person. Then why didn't you say anything? Her tone remained calm. I wanted to see how long it would take you to notice. What? Was she testing my observation skills? Or playing some kind of psychological game with me? Manager Lou. Then about the money. We'll talk tomorrow at work. She hung up. I sat frozen in my seat, gripping my phone while the roar of the high-speed train filled my ears. We'll talk tomorrow. Talk about what? And how? A very bad feeling crept into my chest. This situation was clearly not going to follow any of the plans I had imagined. By the time I returned to my rental apartment, it was already 9 at night. My roommate, Luis, Was gaming. Without even lifting his head, he said, "You're back." "Yeah, there's a package on your desk. Arrived before New Year." I tossed my luggage aside and walked over. A small box. No sender address. I opened it. Inside was a mug with an orange cartoon cat printed on it, almost identical to the WeChat profile picture. There was also a note attached to the bottom. "Happy New Year." No signature. I flipped the note over. On the back was a single line written in tiny handwriting. "No need to send the 6th payment." The 6th payment. February's transfer. Not only did she know I'd been sending the money by mistake, she even knew I still hadn't realized it all this time. She had been waiting to see whether I'd continue sending money in February. This woman. What the hell was she thinking? Chapter 4. I placed the mug on my desk and collapsed backward into my chair. Luis finally turned away from his game screen and glanced at it. "Yo, who gave you that? Looks pretty nice. You got a girlfriend now?" "No." "Then who sent it?" "My boss." Luis nearly dropped his controller. "Your boss sent you a mug?" "Wait, your boss is a woman?" "Yeah." "How old?" 28. "Is she hot?" I opened my mouth but suddenly didn't know how to answer. Was Willow attractive? Objectively speaking, she was easily among the most beautiful women I'd ever met in real life. High ponytail, perfect skin even without makeup. When she wore dress pants, her legs looked ridiculously long. She never smiled during meetings, but the few times she did smile, I'd only seen it twice, and both times had been directed at me. "She's pretty," I admitted. Luis looked at me with the expression of someone who understood everything while I understood nothing. "Bro," he said, "I think you did something huge without realizing what situation you're actually in." "Yeah, I did do something huge. I sent my boss monthly allowance money for 5 straight months, and she accepted it, then mailed me a mug. And yesterday she said we'd talk in person once work started again." I barely slept the whole night. When my alarm rang at 7 in the morning, I stared at myself in the mirror. The dark circles under my eyes looked like I'd been punched twice. After getting dressed, I bought an Americano on the way to work, hoping caffeine would force my brain awake. I entered the company building, swiped my card, and stepped into the elevator. Just as the doors were about to close, a hand reached in and stopped them. Willow, black coat, gray scarf, a thermos cup in her hand. She stepped inside and stood to my left. Only the two of us were in the elevator. "Morning," she said. "Morning, Manager Lou. How was your new year?" "Pretty good." "Yours?" "Pretty good." The elevator rose toward the 30th floor. 10 silent seconds passed. Then she suddenly spoke. "You received the mug?" "Yes, thank you." "You're welcome." She glanced at me. "Consider it the interest." "Interest?" A mug was the interest on 2,600. That interest rate was criminally low. I licked my lips nervously. "Manager Lou, about the money." Ding. The elevator stopped at the 17th floor. The doors opened. Maria from the marketing department was standing outside. Willow immediately stopped talking and walked out without another word. I followed behind her. As I passed Maria, she gave me an extremely suspicious grin and wiggled her eyebrows. I ignored her. After sitting down at my workstation, I opened my computer and pretended to read emails. In reality, I couldn't focus on a single word. Willow's office was the glass-walled room at the end of the hallway, its door slightly ajar. At 9:30, the department morning meeting began. 5 of us sat around the small conference table. Willow opened her notebook and swept her gaze across everyone. "The post-holiday review reports are due by the end of today. We'll discuss the KPI allocation plan for the new quarter this afternoon. George, stay behind afterward." The other 3 people glanced at me before standing up to leave. Makoto left last. As he walked past me, he deliberately bumped my chair. Well, George, first day back after New Year and the supervisor already wants private tutoring time with you." I ignored him. The door closed. Willow set down her pen and leaned back in her chair, looking directly at me. "I don't plan on returning the 2,600. I was speechless. Just as I was about to speak, she lifted a hand slightly. "Let me finish first. When the first transfer arrived, I did think you'd sent it to the wrong person, but you never said anything. So I decided to wait and see. The second month, another transfer came. That's when I became certain you really had sent it to the wrong person. Then why?" I started. "Because," she said calmly, "I thought it was interesting." Interesting? My 2,600 was interesting to her. "You," she continued while looking at me, "don't talk much at work. You never volunteer to speak during meetings, but every proposal you submit is the most detailed in the entire department. Do you know how many times you've voluntarily spoken to me during the year and a half you've worked here?" I shook my head. 17 sentences. She counted. She paused briefly before continuing. "With the 2 sentences you said in the elevator today, that makes 19. I genuinely didn't know what to say, which probably made this sentence number 20. "But every month," she said, lifting her thermos for a sip of water, You transfer allowance money to your little sister on time, consistently, never missing a single month. That's when I realized you're not actually someone who talks too little. You just haven't been speaking to the right person. I had a feeling those words carried a much deeper meaning, but I absolutely did not dare think in that direction. Chapter 5. So, the money. How about this? She interrupted. Help me with something, and we'll treat the $2,600 as my consulting fee. What kind of thing? I need someone to accompany me to an industry networking event this Saturday. You mean, as a coworker escort? You can interpret it that way. I still couldn't figure out what she actually meant, but honestly, if the $2,600 was gone, then so be it. That was still better than having her hold this whole thing over me forever. All right, Saturday, 10:30 a.m., hotel lobby, wear formal clothes. She lowered her head and continued reading documents, making it obvious the conversation was over. I stood up and prepared to leave. Just as I reached the door, she called out to me again. George, yeah. In the future, make sure the allowance goes to your sister. Don't transfer it to the wrong person again. After saying that, she casually turned another page of her document, as if this entire incident was nothing more than a tiny side story. But when she said those words, I caught a brief expression on her face. Not amusement, not teasing. It looked more like regret, as if she genuinely found it a little unfortunate. Back at my desk, Makoto leaned over. So, did you get chewed out? No, just discussing work. What kind of work discussion requires a closed office door? He laughed in a way that instantly made me uncomfortable. George, let me give you some honest advice. Willow isn't a simple person. Don't get too close to her. Thanks for the concern. I mean it. He lowered his voice. Do you know what level she used to be at in headquarters? She got transferred down here. What does that have to do with me? Of course it has something to do with you. If she ends up using you. Makoto. I turned to look at him. I still haven't finished my review report. Have you finished yours? You seem pretty free. He awkwardly backed off and left. I reopened my document. My fingers rested on the keyboard without typing a single word. My head was completely filled with what Willow had said earlier. 17 sentences. She had actually counted the number of times I voluntarily spoke to her. At 2 in the afternoon, the KPI allocation meeting began. 5 of us sat together while Willow projected the new quarter's project list onto the screen. There are 3 key projects this quarter, she said. Swan brand redevelopment, the East City Complex promotional campaign, and the internal bidding project for the group's annual branding strategy. Her gaze swept across the room. Swan goes to Makoto. Makoto nodded immediately, looking pleased with himself. Willow paused briefly before continuing. East City Complex goes to George. Makoto's expression changed instantly. East City Complex was the biggest project of the quarter. Its budget was more than double that of the Swan project. Manager Lou. Makoto immediately spoke up. I did the preliminary research for East City last year. I'm more familiar with the project. I reviewed your research report. Willow didn't even look up. It wasn't detailed enough. I can supplement it. George, come here. She flipped to another slide in the presentation. Any further questions? Makoto opened his mouth but couldn't say anything. After the meeting, the sound of him slamming the door echoed through 2 separate walls. Maria from marketing sneaked over afterward and leaned against the divider of my cubicle. George, I heard East City Complex got assigned to you. Yeah, that's a huge project. Doesn't Manager Lou usually give projects like that to Makoto? What kind of luck did you hit? No idea. She made an extremely suggestive expression. Don't tell me you two are. Maria. Yes. Your marketing department's monthly report is due today. Have you finished it yet? She instantly fled the scene. By the time overtime ended at 7:30, only Willow and I were left in the office. She stepped out of her glass office carrying her bag and paused beside my desk. You're still not leaving. I wanted to review the East City materials a bit more. She stood there watching me for a few seconds. Don't stay too late. Okay. She walked 2 steps away before stopping again. And don't forget about Saturday. I won't. Then she left. Once the office was completely empty, I leaned back in my chair and stared blankly ahead for a while. The water inside the orange cat mug on my desk had already gone cold. Chapter 6. Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday passed with unexpected calm. At the office, Willow treated me no differently than anyone else, professional, efficient, and businesslike. At one point, I even started wondering if Monday's conversation had just been some bizarre dream. The only abnormal thing was Makoto. Over those 3 days, his attitude toward me upgraded from mildly unfriendly to openly hostile. During Thursday afternoon tea break, he casually said in front of 3 coworkers, "Young people sure climb the ladder fast these days. Makes you wonder what kind of skills they're relying on." Nobody responded. Neither did I. Not because I was being mature. It just wasn't worth it. Friday afternoon, Willow posted a message in the group chat. Saturday's industry networking event. George will accompany me. Everyone else can enjoy the weekend off. Makoto instantly replied with a received. Even through the screen, I could feel the anger radiating from that exclamation mark. Saturday morning at 9. I changed into the only suit I owned and headed out. I'd bought it during last year's Double 11 sale. The pant legs were slightly too long, so I'd pinned them up myself with safety pins. When I arrived at the hotel lobby, Willow was already there. Red dress, black blazer, her hair hanging loose. It was the first time I'd ever seen her wearing a dress, and the first time I'd seen her with her hair down. When she spotted me, she calmly said, "You're here, let's go." She naturally walked ahead while I followed half a step behind. The networking event was being held in the hotel ballroom. There were around 20 or 30 attendees, mostly middle and upper management from various companies. At the sign-in desk, the receptionist asked Willow, "Manager Lou, and this is my coworker, George." "Understood. We've arranged seating for you at table 6. On the way there, multiple people greeted Willow. "Manager Lou, long time no see." "Willow, when are you coming back to headquarters?" "Wow, Willow, you look beautiful today." She responded to everyone politely with practiced smiles, but the moment we reached a spot with no people nearby, the smile vanished instantly. "So exhausting," she muttered quietly. I couldn't help asking, "Then why did you come?" "There's someone here I need to make sure sees me." "Who?" She didn't answer. Instead, her gaze shifted toward the entrance. A man in his 50s walked in with 2 younger men beside him. For a brief moment, Willow's expression changed. I couldn't describe the emotion on her face, but it definitely wasn't happiness. In a low voice, she told me, "No matter what happens later, don't speak, okay?" The men noticed Willow immediately and walked straight toward us. "Willow, you're back." He smiled while extending his hand. "How's your father's health recently?" "He's doing all right, thank you for asking, Uncle Joe." Willow shook his hand briefly before letting go. The men glanced at me. "And this is my coworker." "Oh." His eyes stayed on me for less than a second before shifting away again. "Willow, I've still been thinking about your father's situation. Have you considered the proposal we discussed before?" "I'm still considering it. Don't take too long." He curled his lips into a smile. "Time waits for no one." Then he walked away. The moment he turned around, Willow dropped the smile she'd been wearing the entire time. "Who was that?" I couldn't help asking. "Duncan, vice president of the industry association. He used to be my father's business partner." "Used to?" "Later, he manipulated things and swallowed up my father's shares. The stress nearly killed my dad." Her tone was calm, almost detached, as if she were talking about someone else's life, but the fingers gripping her thermos cup had gone pale white. "So you came to this networking event just to," she interrupted me, "to remind him I'm still here, and make him uncomfortable." I looked at her profile and suddenly realized every impression I'd had of her before was only surface level. She wasn't just a strict department manager. Halfway through the networking event, there was a short presentation segment for each company. Our company was fourth. Willow went on stage and spent 5 minutes presenting a review of one of last quarter's successful projects. She spoke steadily and clearly. Her logic was sharp, and several people in the audience nodded along. Only Duncan, seated in the front row, spent the entire presentation staring at his phone. After she finished and stepped off stage, she passed by Duncan. He suddenly spoke. "Willow, nice case study, but honestly, your current platform is a bit too small for someone like you." Willow didn't even slow down. "It's sufficient." His tone carried obvious contempt. "Your father didn't think on such a small scale back then." Willow stopped walking. Then, word by word, she replied, "No matter how grand my father's ambitions were, he still got stabbed in the back by someone he trusted." The smile on Duncan's face stiffened for half a second. Willow continued walking. As she passed beside me, she quietly said, "We're leaving." Chapter 7. We stayed at the networking event for barely over an hour. After leaving the hotel, Willow stood at the entrance and took a deep breath. "Thanks for coming with me. I didn't really do anything. Just standing there was enough." She turned her head slightly to look at me. "If I'd gone alone, it would have looked too lonely." "All right then." So my role today had basically been a decorative background tree that could breathe. "Come on," she said. "I'll treat you to dinner." After taking 2 steps forward, she stopped and asked, "Any food you can't eat?" "Nope." "Good." She took me to a small Japanese restaurant hidden beside the hotel, tucked away inside an alley. We ordered 2 set meals and sat across from each other. Halfway through the meal, she suddenly asked, "George, you've been at the company for a year and a half now. How much money have you saved?" "Not much." "Give me a number." "A little over 30,000. Enough for a down payment." "A down payment?" I laughed. "For an apartment in this city, I'd still need another 0 added to that amount." She didn't laugh. Instead, she looked at me and asked, "Have you ever considered changing jobs?" "I've thought about it, just never found the right opportunity." "What if I recommended one for you?" I put down my chopsticks. "What do you mean?" The client for East City Complex, Oceanwide Real Estate, is hiring a planning director. The annual salary is triple what you make now. Triple. My current salary before tax was $9,000 a month. Triple meant $27,000. What level are they looking for? 3 years of experience minimum, plus experience with major projects. She paused before continuing. If East City Complex goes well, that'll become a ready-made case study for you. I stared at her for a long moment before finally saying, so giving me East City Complex wasn't just about work allocation. Work allocation was obviously one reason. She replied while picking up a slice of salmon. The other reason is what I already told you. You make the most detailed proposals. And is there a third reason? She didn't answer. She simply lowered her head and continued eating. On the way back, we walked together for a while without talking much. When we reached the subway entrance, she suddenly asked, "Where does your sister go to school?" "City Normal University, 2nd year." "What's her major?" "Language and literature." "Not bad." She took out her subway card and then said, "George, about that $2,600. "No need," I interrupted. She looked at me. "So it's no longer my consulting fee?" I replied. "Today even things out." She smiled, the third time I had ever seen her smile. "All right," she said softly, "then we're even." She entered the subway station while I stood at the entrance watching her figure disappear around the escalator corner. I stood there for a long time. Luis was right. I really hadn't understood what situation I was in. But this time, I had a feeling I wasn't the only person trying to figure things out anymore. Monday. The first thing that happened at work was Makoto placing a cup of coffee in front of me. Smiling, he said, "Tough weekend." I glanced at the coffee without touching it. "What do you mean?" His smile turned meaningful as he lowered his voice. "I heard you went to the industry networking event with manager Lou, and then had dinner together afterward." News spread fast. "Work arrangement," I replied. "Oh, work arrangement." He repeated the words deliberately loudly, just enough for the 2 co-workers nearby to hear. "George, I've been in this department for 3 years, and manager Lou's never personally taken me anywhere before. You've only been here a year and a half, and you already get this kind of treatment. Honestly impressive." "Makoto," I said calmly, "if you have something to say it directly." He leaned closer and let out a cold laugh. "Directly? Fine. Then let me ask you this. Do you have some kind of inappropriate relationship with Willow?" Silence. 2 full seconds. I looked at him expressionlessly. "Say that again," I said. But before he could finish, "George." "Makoto." Willow's voice came from the other end of the hallway. She stood outside her office holding her thermos cup, face completely unreadable. Inside. Now. Chapter 8. The 2 of us walked into Willow's office one after another. The door closed behind us. Willow sat down and immediately looked at Makoto. "What exactly did you mean by inappropriate relationship?" Makoto's expression stiffened slightly, but he still refused to back down. "Manager Lou, I just think this whole situation is unfair. East City Complex is such a huge project, yet you handed it to someone who's only been here a year and a half. Then over the weekend, you personally took him out to networking events." Willow cut him off directly. "First, the East City Complex assignment was based on my professional evaluation of everyone's abilities. The reasoning is clearly written in the project allocation email. Second, I take someone with me to these networking events every quarter. Last quarter, I took Maria. Why didn't you have a problem with that? Third," she paused and placed her thermos cup on the table, "you mentioned an inappropriate relationship. Do you have any evidence?" Makoto went silent. Willow frowned, her voice turning icy. "If you make accusations like that in the workplace without evidence, do you know what it's called? It's called defamation. And the person you're defaming isn't just George, it's me too." Makoto's face turned bright red. "Manager Lou, go revise the Swan proposal. There are 3 errors in the data from your last presentation. I want the updated version on my desk before Wednesday." Makoto left looking like he'd just been slapped in public. I also prepared to leave, but Willow stopped me. "If he says anything else in the future, ignore him." "Okay, when can you finish the first draft for East City Complex?" "Before Friday." "Good." She lowered her head and returned to reading documents. I left the office. Back at my desk, Makoto wasn't there. The coworker beside me, Elias, leaned over and whispered, "George, Makoto was just in the break room on the phone ranting about you for like 5 straight minutes. Let him. He said he's going to complain to Vice President Casey." Casey was the vice president overseeing our department, Willow's direct superior. "Complain about what?" "He says Manager Lou is favoring you and wants them to investigate your relationship." I slowly set down my mouse. This whole thing had started because of some mistakenly transferred allowance money. How the hell had it escalated into this? Wednesday at noon, while I was eating in the cafeteria, Lillian messaged me on WeChat. "Bro, I want to sign up for an IELTS prep course. It's $5,000. Can you sponsor half?" Sure. I opened WeChat transfers. This time, I carefully checked the profile picture 3 times and the nickname 3 times before pressing send. Once bitten by a snake, after sending the money, I casually asked, "Why does your profile picture look exactly the same as my boss's?" "What boss?" "My department manager. She also uses an orange cat." "Huh? Seriously?" Lillian sent a laughing sticker. "No way. Could she be using my artwork?" "I commissioned this profile picture from an artist on Bilibili. It's a custom piece. There are only 2 copies in existence online." My hand froze. "Only 2 copies? Meaning the other one was with Willow?" I typed back, "What's the artist's name?" "Hold on." A moment later she replied, "Good night, Orange Cat." "Why? Good night, Orange Cat." I immediately opened Willow's WeChat moments and scrolled far back through her old posts. Eventually, I found one from 2 years ago. She had shared an article titled, "The Survival Guide to Modern Young People's Side Hustles." Her caption contained only one word, "Trying." I tapped into the article. It interviewed 8 young people with side jobs. The 5th interview, a creative director from an advertising company who spent her spare time drawing custom profile pictures online. Her online nickname, Goodnight Orange Cat. The interview was from 2 years ago. Willow drew it. That orange cat profile picture had been drawn by Willow. She made one for Lillian, and kept the other one for herself. Only 2 copies existed online. So from the very beginning, Lillian had been her client, which meant Willow probably already knew who Lillian was. She knew Lillian's last name was Wong. She knew Lillian was my younger sister. Or was it all just a coincidence? Chapter 9. I spent the entire afternoon replaying that discovery in my head. The more I thought about it, the stranger everything felt. Before leaving work, I did something that was probably very stupid. I checked my onboarding referral records. Our company required an employee referral code for new hires. Back then, I had submitted my resume through a recruitment website, but during the HR interview, they mentioned my resume had entered through the employee referral channel. I'd never paid attention to that detail before. Under the referrer section, one name was written clearly, Willow. A year and a half ago, I didn't even know Willow, but she had referred me into the company. I slowly closed my computer and saw my own reflection in the darkened monitor. What kind of game was this? At 10 that night, I sent Willow a WeChat message. "Manager Lou, there's something I want to ask you." "Go ahead. You were the referrer listed on my onboarding file, right?" The typing indicator appeared, stopped, appeared again, stopped again, 3 times in a row. Finally, she replied with only a few words, "We'll talk tomorrow." Tomorrow again. Did this woman postpone every important conversation until tomorrow? I didn't press further, but I knew very clearly now. This situation had long since become something far more complicated than accidentally sending allowance money to the wrong person. Thursday morning, when I arrived at work, Willow's office door was closed. Even the blinds were drawn shut. You couldn't see inside at all. The 9:30 morning meeting proceeded as usual. She discussed project progress, assigned tasks, and acted completely normal. She didn't look at me any differently. After the meeting, she didn't ask me to stay behind either. The entire morning passed without her stepping out of her office once. At noon, I went to the break room to refill my water bottle. The moment I turned the corner, Makoto blocked my path. Beside him stood someone else, Lisa from Human Resources. Lisa waved at me politely. "George, perfect timing. There's something we need to confirm." "What is it?" "We're currently auditing last year's employee referral bonus records." She glanced down at her notes. "We noticed your referrer was listed as Supervisor Willow, but at the time, Supervisor Willow was still working at headquarters. Logically speaking, she shouldn't have known you back then. Did you two know each other previously?" Makoto stood beside her staring at me with an expression that practically screamed, "Please say yes. Please admit you're secretly together." I shook my head. "No, I applied through the public recruitment website. I honestly don't know why it became a referral application." Lisa wrote something in her notebook. "Understood. Then it was probably assigned by the system. Situations like this have happened before. It doesn't necessarily mean the referrer personally handled it." I asked. "So there's no issue?" "No issue. Thanks for cooperating." Lisa left. Makoto stayed. "You don't think this whole thing is suspicious?" "Makoto," I said flatly, "what exactly are you trying to say?" "What I'm trying to say," he took one step closer. "Do you know what position Willow held at headquarters before transferring to our department?" "No." He curled his lips slightly. "Deputy Director of the headquarters Strategic Planning Center. She managed over 30 employees. She was transferred here under the excuse of supporting the branch office, but in reality, she was pushed out politically. So, he said slowly, her being in this department right now means she's lying low. Everything she does has a purpose, including the way she treats you." I looked directly at him. "You think there's a motive behind her being nice to me?" "You decide for yourself," He patted my shoulder once and walked away. I remained standing in the break room. The water cup in my hand had already overflowed. Chapter 10. At 3 in the afternoon, Willow's office door finally opened. She stepped out and stood at the entrance. "George, come in." I followed her inside. She closed the door behind me. The blinds were still shut. "Sit." "Okay." She looked at me and said, "You asked me something last night. I'll answer you now." I straightened instinctively, listening carefully. "I was the one who pushed your resume through." I asked. "Why?" "We didn't know each other before." "We didn't," she replied. "But your sister knew me." I froze. Willow continued calmly. "Lillian was my client 2 years ago. She found me online and commissioned me to draw her profile picture. So we added each other on WeChat. Later, while chatting, I found out her older brother was looking for work and happened to be in advertising strategy. Our company was hiring at the time. So you referred me." She neither confirmed nor denied it directly. "I looked through your portfolio. The full branding package you did for the tea chain company at your previous job was very good. Better than most of the applicants I interviewed." I asked. "So what came first, seeing my portfolio or knowing Lillian?" She glanced at me. "Knowing Lillian. Then when you referred me into the company, was it because of my abilities or because of Lillian?" "Your abilities." Her answer came without even a second of hesitation. "Lillian only made me aware that someone like you existed. But whether to refer you, whether to hire you, that depended entirely on your work. Then why didn't you tell me?" "There was no need." "You don't think this whole thing feels..." "Feels what?" I carefully chose my words. "Feels orchestrated." Willow said nothing for a moment. She picked up her thermos cup and took a sip of water. After setting it down, she said something I completely didn't expect. "You're right. It was orchestrated, but not toward you. Toward myself." I frowned. "What does that mean?" "When I was transferred down from headquarters, I needed someone trustworthy nearby. Your sister spent all day on WeChat talking about how reliable and sincere her older brother was. So I believed her. You trusted me just based on what my sister said. Combined with your portfolio." She leaned back in her chair and asked, "George, are you angry?" I didn't answer, because it wasn't anger. It was something much harder to describe. Turns out my joining this company, being assigned to this department, and receiving her support, none of it had been accidental. But if none of it was accidental, then what part of this was real? I asked quietly. "What about East City Complex? Was that arranged too?" "No," she answered immediately. "You earned that yourself, the networking event. I genuinely needed someone there with me. And the 2,600. She fell silent. "The 2,600 was an accident," she finally said. "That really was a mistaken transfer. I accepted it because..." She stopped. It was the first time I had ever seen Willow pause halfway through a sentence. I pressed gently. "Because of what?" "Because that was the allowance money you sent your sister." Her voice lowered slightly. "I don't have any siblings. So when I saw those monthly transfers, it wasn't about the money. It was that feeling of someone remembering you every month, consistently, like it was the most natural thing in the world, with no expectation of repayment." She didn't finish the sentence, but I understood. What she lacked was never money. It was the feeling of being cared about. The office remained silent for nearly half a minute. I was the one who spoke first. "Manager Lou, I said. "If you want, the allowance money can keep coming in the future." She looked up at me and immediately let out a laugh she couldn't suppress. "The fourth time. Do you even realize what you're saying?" Willow asked. "Yes. You're basically telling your boss that." I interrupted her. "I'm telling someone without siblings that, if she doesn't mind, she's welcome to share the allowance budget reserved for my little sister." She stared at me for 3 full seconds before saying, "I don't want allowance money." "Then what do you want?" "The East City Complex proposal on my desk before tomorrow." She pushed the documents toward me and lowered her head, her hair falling forward to hide part of her face, but I still caught sight of the faint redness around her ears. "Friday afternoon, 4 o'clock. The first draft for East City Complex was officially submitted. Willow spent 2 full hours reviewing it page by page before posting a message in the group chat. "The proposal has passed overall review. Detailed revision notes have been sent by email. Client presentation is scheduled for Monday." Makoto replied in the group with a thumbs up emoji, but that thumbs up definitely was not meant as praise. When work ended, Willow stepped out of her office and paused beside my desk. "The proposal was well done. Thank you. 2 people from the client side are coming Monday. Their planning director, David, and their vice president of marketing. David likes nitpicking details. Prepare the data models carefully." "Understood, She walked 2 steps away before turning back again. "And don't stay up all weekend working overtime." "Okay." Then she left. Beside me, Elias made an extremely faint, but extremely sincere, clicking sound with his tongue. I pretended not to hear it. Chapter 11. I didn't pull any all-nighters over the weekend, but I was busy from morning until night regardless. I rebuilt the data model for East City Complex 3 separate times. Each version ran 2 additional parameter simulations on top of the previous one. Monday morning, 9 o'clock. Client presentation. The client side brought 3 people, one more than Willow had expected. David, early 40s, glasses. The moment he sat down, he immediately started flipping through the proposal index. The second was a younger man, apparently his assistant. The third person didn't sit down at all. He stood by the window, looking outside. A middle-aged man in a tailored suit, probably around 50. I glanced at Willow. Her expression changed. Not nervousness, more like a sharp burst of caution that she quickly suppressed. I recognized the silhouette. We'd seen him at the networking event last Saturday. Duncan, one of Oceanwide Real Estate's shareholders, vice president of the industry association, and the same man Willow said had manipulated her father out of his shares. He turned around and smiled at Willow. Willow, you don't mind me listening in too, do you? I happen to have invested in East City Complex as well. Willow paused for less than half a second. Of course not. Please, have a seat. The presentation began. I handled the main presentation while Willow supplemented details. The first 20 minutes went smoothly. David was very satisfied with the data models. He asked several technical questions, and I answered every single one. Then we reached the promotional strategy section. That was when Duncan spoke. Mr. Wong, correct? He flipped through the printed proposal in his hands. In your community engagement strategy, you estimate a conversion rate of 12%. Where exactly does that number come from? Willow and I had rehearsed this question beforehand. I knew the source data perfectly clearly. That number is based on 3 reference cases. He interrupted me. I know their references. What I'm asking is whether any of those reference cases perfectly match the scale of East City Complex. I replied. There's roughly a 10% scale deviation. He closed the proposal folder. Then that 12% estimate isn't accurate. Strictly speaking, it isn't scientifically rigorous. David adjusted his glasses without speaking. I opened my mouth to explain further, but under the table, I felt Willow lightly tap my hand. Mr. Duncan is correct. Willow smoothly took over. 12% is the result of the preliminary model. During actual implementation, we'll validate the data in stages. There's a detailed adjustment mechanism explained on page 23. That is, assuming you flipped to that page. Duncan didn't. He simply stared at Willow. Willow, I'm not trying to nitpick. I genuinely think that for a project of this level, he glanced at me briefly, your team might still need a bit more maturity. Willow responded instantly. Our team is indeed young, but the advantage of being young is that we don't solve new problems with old methods. The conference room fell silent for a brief moment. That was when David finally spoke. We'll take the proposal back and conduct another internal discussion round. Manager Liu, Mr. Wong, thank you for your hard work. The presentation ended. After the clients left, Willow stopped me in the hallway. You did well today, I sighed. Duncan still managed to pick apart one weakness. That wasn't really a weakness. It was just a matter of perspective. He doesn't actually care whether the number is 12% or 11%. He came here to see me. To see what? To see whether I'm doing well at this branch office. She walked into her office and continued. The better I'm doing, the more unhappy he becomes. Why? Because the better I do here, the more likely it is that I'll return to headquarters. She sat down after saying that and didn't continue, but those words planted themselves in my mind like a seed. She wanted to go back to headquarters. She had always wanted to go back, and if she did, what would happen to me? Chapter 12. When I got back to the apartment that evening, Luis was cooking instant noodles. Without even turning around, he said, "Grab me an egg." I took one from the refrigerator and handed it to him before leaning against the kitchen doorway in a daze. "What now?" he asked while stirring the noodles. "Nothing." He turned off the stove and glanced at me. "You've been talking less and less lately. Does this have something to do with your female boss?" "How did you know?" He snorted. "The night before yesterday, you talked in your sleep. You literally called out Manager Liu. I decided right then that from now on I needed to sleep with my mouth covered." Luis tilted his chin toward me. "So, spill it. What's going on?" I replayed everything in my mind. The mistaken allowance transfers, her deliberately not returning the money, the mug, the networking event, Duncan, the referral hire, Lillian being her client, her being pushed out from headquarters to the branch office. Every individual piece had a perfectly reasonable explanation, but when all the pieces were put together, it still felt like there was one crucial puzzle piece missing. Luis carried his noodles to the dining table and asked, "I'll just ask you one thing. Does she treat you well?" "More or less." "Then does she treat everyone else well too?" I thought for a moment. "Not really." "There you go." He slurped up a mouthful of noodles and spoke vaguely through them. "If someone treats you better than they treat everyone else, then either they need something from you, or they care about you. What exactly do you think she needs from you?" "East City Complex," I answered. Luis scoffed. That was an opportunity she gave you. That's not her asking you for something. Think harder. I couldn't think of anything. So it's the second option. After saying that, he simply carried his bowl away. Tuesday. Everything was peaceful. Willow stayed in her office the entire day. The only time she came out was to answer a phone call in a foreign language. I couldn't understand what she was saying. Even Makoto behaved himself for once. He revised the Swan project proposal 3 separate times, and Willow rejected all 3 versions. At 5 in the afternoon, I received an email. Sender, Casey, Vice President. The content contained only one sentence. George, come to my office Friday at 2 p.m. No explanation. I asked Willow about it, but she didn't know either. She frowned slightly. Casey's looking for you. What for? The email didn't say. All right, I'll ask around for you. Thursday night, Willow sent me a WeChat message. I asked. He said it's just a routine conversation. Don't be nervous. Routine conversation. I'd been at the company for a year and a half and had never once been invited for a routine conversation with a vice president. Friday, 2 p.m. I knocked on Casey's office door. Come in. Vice President Casey was in his early 40s, tall, with slightly thinning hair. A handkerchief embroidered with golf clubs sat on his desk. Sit. Thank you, Vice President Casey. You're George, right? Been with the company a year and a half. Yes. The East City Complex proposal was well done. I reviewed it. Thank you, but that's not what I called you here to discuss. He leaned back in his chair, fingers interlocked over his stomach. There's a situation I'd like to understand better. Of course. Someone reported, he paused before continuing, that you and Supervisor Willow have interactions exceeding the boundaries of a normal co-worker relationship. What's your response to that? I knew it. Makoto had filed a complaint. Vice President Casey, that isn't true. Explain, I calmly said. Manager Lou bringing me to the industry networking event was a normal work arrangement. Last quarter, she brought Maria from marketing. The East City Complex assignment has documented email records showing it was based on capability assessments. As for personal interactions, I paused briefly before continuing. There aren't any. Casey studied me silently for several seconds. George, let me ask you one thing. I'd like an honest answer. Of course. He looked directly at me and asked, has Willow ever mentioned wanting to return to headquarters? Chapter 13. I hadn't expected him to ask that. I froze for a second before instinctively answering. No. Casey looked at me. Really? She mentioned the possibility of returning to headquarters once, I admitted, but she never discussed anything specific. Casey nodded slowly. Headquarters is indeed considering transferring her back. She spent a year at the branch office, and her results are obvious to everyone. The current estimate is as early as next quarter. I frowned. What does that have to do with me? A lot. He sat up straighter, his expression turning serious. Once she leaves, RD Department 2 will need a new supervisor. There are currently 2 candidates, Makoto and you. I stared at him blankly. I'd only been here a year and a half. Makoto had been here for 3 years. Vice President Casey, my experience level. He waved a hand, cutting me off. Experience isn't the only standard. Ability, performance, project history, those matter too. But there's one prerequisite. You and Willow must be completely clean. If there's any evidence of favoritism, private relationships influencing project allocation, or conflicts of interest, then not only will you lose your chance, Willow's transfer back to headquarters will also be affected. I understand. Good. He stood up. You can decide for yourself how to handle things from here. Pretend this conversation never happened, but remember it. After leaving the vice president's office, I stood silently in the hallway for a full minute. Makoto had indeed filed a complaint, but Casey's purpose today wasn't entirely innocent either. He was drawing boundaries for me. At the same time, he was making one thing very clear. Willow was leaving. Back at our department floor, I saw the light in Willow's office still on. She stood by the window with her back facing the glass wall, like she was thinking about something. I didn't go in. I returned to my desk. That night, after everyone else had left work, I stayed behind revising the data model. Willow's office door opened. She walked out. You're still here? I nodded, adjusting the model. What did Casey say to you? I looked up. There was something slightly different in her expression compared to usual. I wasn't sure what to call it. Concern, maybe. He said you're going back to headquarters. Her footsteps paused briefly. What else did he say? He said Makoto and I are the candidates to replace you. And I hesitated for a moment. He also said that whatever exists between us has to stay clean. She said nothing. 10 full seconds of silence passed. Then she pulled over a chair and sat down across from me. George, yeah. She asked quietly. Do you think what exists between us is clean? I looked at her. Most of the office lights had already been turned off. Only the lamp above my workstation remained on. The light hit half her face. leaving the other half in shadow. I don't know, I answered honestly. Neither do I. Another few seconds of silence. Then she spoke again. But there's one thing I do know. What? If I return to headquarters, and honestly, it's probably next quarter, I'll recommend you to take over RD department too. Not because you accidentally sent me 5 months of allowance money. Not because Lillian uses the profile picture I drew. But because your proposals genuinely are the best. Makoto won't accept that. Willow shook her head calmly. It doesn't matter whether Makoto accepts it. What matters is whether Casey does. I hesitated. Casey's attitude today. He was testing you. Willow interrupted. As long as you maintain your current performance and East City Complex succeeds, you don't need to worry about anything else. I asked quietly. What about you? What about me? If you return to headquarters, I stopped midway through the sentence. I didn't know how to ask what I really wanted to ask. What I actually wanted to say was, if you go back to headquarters, will I still see you? If you go back to headquarters, can I still send you allowance money? Both questions sounded unbearably stupid. So instead, I asked, what happens with Duncan after you go back? She blinked, clearly not expecting that question. I'm going back to headquarters because of Duncan. She stood up. It's late. Let's go. She packed her bag. I shut down my computer. The two of us walked out of the company building one after another. At the entrance, she asked, how are you getting home? Subway, then bus. I'm heading the same direction. I can give you a ride. I waved my hand lightly. No need. She turned to look at me. Because of what Casey said earlier? No, I thought for a moment before answering. I just want to walk by myself for a while. She didn't insist. She simply nodded and got into her car. The car drove about 10 meters before stopping again. The window rolled down. George. Yeah. She asked. Are you still using that mug? I am. Don't break it. The window rolled back up. Then the car drove away. Chapter 14. I stood by the roadside, watching the taillights disappear into the distance. Suddenly, the spot in my chest felt strangely swollen. It wasn't pain. It was the feeling of losing something before I even had the chance to understand what it was. Over the next 2 weeks, everything accelerated. The proposal for East City Complex entered the second round of revisions. The client sent over 17 revision requests, and Willow and I pulled 4 all-nighters fixing them. Makoto's Swan project was going badly. The client was extremely dissatisfied with the second draft and even slammed the table during the meeting. The company held its internal monthly meeting. During the meeting, President Casey specifically mentioned East City Complex. George's team has been incredibly efficient. Every department should learn from them. Makoto was sitting in the back row, and his face looked practically green with envy. The day after the monthly meeting, something happened. When I arrived at the office in the morning, I realized someone had touched my computer. The order of the files on my desktop was different. I checked the login records. Someone had used my workstation computer at 3 in the morning, using my account. But at that time, I had been asleep in my rented apartment. I went straight to Tony in the IT department and asked him to investigate. Half an hour later, Tony got back to me. George, someone logged into your account on your computer at 3 a.m. They opened the East City Complex project folder. Did they download anything? I asked. Can't confirm that, but a USB drive was connected. There's a plug-in and removal record. Someone had stolen my proposal. My first thought was Makoto, but I had no proof. I went to find Willow. The proposal got leaked. She looked up immediately, her expression turning serious. What happened? I told her everything IT had found. The moment she finished listening, she picked up the phone. Tony, pull up the surveillance footage from that workstation. What? There's no footage. The surveillance camera in our department hallway had broken 3 days earlier and still hadn't been repaired. Willow hung up the phone. Who do you suspect? There's no evidence yet. Hard to say. She looked at me. Then I'll say it directly. Makoto. I didn't answer, which was basically an admission. She stood up. If the proposal was leaked to a competing company, we'll lose East City Complex. But before we have proof, we can't alert the snake. First, revise the key sections of the proposal. Replace the core data set and adjust the strategic framework. If we revise it before sending it to the client, all the details we finalized earlier will have to be redone. That's still better than letting someone else use our work to bid against us. She was right. I spent 2 days and 2 nights revising the core sections, not rebuilding everything from scratch, but replacing the supporting data and execution path while keeping the overall framework intact. Same skeleton, different muscles. If someone tried bidding with the old proposal, they'd realize the moment they presented it that it no longer matched our final version. At that point, it would be obvious who copied whom. On the 3rd day, the result came out. Another company had appeared on the bidding list for East City Complex, Axion Advertising. Axion's planning director was named Martin. He had worked at our company for half a year before and was very close to Makoto. When Willow saw the list, she laughed coldly. As expected, She picked up the phone and called David. David, there are some things about the bidding process I'd like to discuss with you in person. If possible, let's meet this afternoon. Chapter 15. At 3 in the afternoon, Willow and I arrived at Oceanwide Real Estate. David received us in his office. Willow went straight to the point. David, Axion Advertising joined the bidding recently, right? David nodded. That's right. They submitted their letter of intent last week. Why? Have you reviewed their proposal yet? Not yet. The official presentations are next Monday. Willow opened the laptop she had brought with her and placed my old proposal and the revised version side by side in front of David. These are two versions of our proposal. The old one was the initial draft from 2 weeks ago. The new one was finalized yesterday. The core strategy has undergone major revisions. David adjusted his glasses as he compared the two versions. The changes are pretty significant. Why revise this much? Because we have reason to believe the old proposal was leaked. Willow showed him screenshots of the USB connection logs. These are records from our internal IT department. Someone stole the old files from my colleague's computer. David's expression changed instantly. You mean? Willow continued calmly. What I mean is, if Axion's proposal next Monday ends up highly similar to our old version, that won't be a coincidence. David fell silent for 10 seconds. Manager Lou, that's a very serious accusation. I know. That's why I'm not here today asking you to make a judgment. I'm only asking you to pay closer attention when the time comes. After leaving Oceanwide Real Estate, Willow sat in the car for a while without starting the engine. I asked, "What are you thinking about?" "I'm wondering why Makoto would do this. To compete for the supervisor position. If East City Complex gets ruined, I won't have any strong project results to show. Then the position naturally goes to him." Willow asked. "Then why doesn't he just do well on the Swan project himself?" I shrugged. "Because he's not capable enough." Willow glanced at me and suddenly laughed. She brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "You usually don't talk much, but when it matters, your judgment is sharp. Learned it from you." She didn't respond to that. She simply started the car. Warm air flowed from the heater while rain poured outside. She dropped me off at the intersection closest to the subway entrance. "George." "Yeah. Next Monday's the bidding presentation. Are you ready?" "I'm ready. If we win." She stared at the red traffic light ahead and spoke slowly. "Word by word. I'll treat you to Japanese food. Going back to the same restaurant as last time." "Maybe not." The red light turned green. "Depends on my mood." I got out of the car. The rain was getting heavier, and by the time I ran to the subway entrance, half my body was already soaked. Standing at the entrance, watching her car merge into traffic, I suddenly realized something. From the very beginning, from the day I accidentally transferred the allowance money to the wrong person, everything had formed a chain of clues, each link connected to the next. Lillian, the orange cat profile picture, the employee referral, East City Complex, Duncan, Makoto, the leaked proposal. If Willow were removed from this chain, none of these things would have happened. But if she remained in the chain, every single thing pointed in the same direction. Monday, the day of the bidding presentation. Inside Oceanwide Real Estate's main conference room sat 6 people: David, his assistant, the vice president of marketing, legal counsel, and Duncan. There were 3 bidding companies, us, Axion, and a small out-of-town agency. The presentation order was determined by drawing lots. Axion went first. We were second. The third company would present last. Axion's Martin was tall and skinny. He entered the conference room with 2 assistants. Their presentation lasted 45 minutes. I waited outside in the lounge area and couldn't hear the content. But Willow's connections were wider than mine. An old colleague of hers from Oceanwide Real Estate's legal department secretly helped her take photos of several key pages from Axion's presentation. Willow silently flipped through the pages on her phone, then handed it to me without saying a word. I looked. The strategic framework was over 80% similar to my old proposal. As for the supporting data, some sections even contained the exact same typo. In my old draft, I had accidentally typed penetration rate incorrectly, and they had copied the exact same mistake. Chapter 16. That was undeniable proof. Willow put away her phone and asked me, "Are you nervous?" "Not really," but she said, "I'm a little nervous." It was the first time she had ever admitted that in front of me. "Manager Lou, no matter what happens today, call me Willow." I paused for a second. "Willow, no matter what happens today, this is the best proposal I've ever made." She nodded. "Then that's enough. Let's go in." I delivered the most important presentation of my life. Standing inside Oceanwide Real Estate's conference room, facing 6 people, I went from the first slide to the last. 1 hour and 5 minutes. During the presentation, David asked 7 questions, and I answered every one of them with solid reasoning and evidence. The vice president of marketing was particularly impressed by the implementation plan for the community engagement campaign. Legal confirmed the proposal's compliance. Duncan didn't say a single word. Not one word from beginning to end. He simply sat there, looking at me, and occasionally looking at Willow standing beside me. When the presentation ended, we walked out of the conference room. Inside the elevator, Willow suddenly reached out her hand. I froze for a moment before taking it. Her palm was sweaty. She held it for about 2 seconds before letting go. "You did great. Thanks. Now we wait for the result." As we walked out of the ocean-wide real estate building, someone called out behind us, "Willow." It was Duncan. He stood alone on the steps with his hands in the pockets of his overcoat. He glanced at me. "Your eye for talent is better than your father's." Willow turned around. "Uncle Joe, why didn't you say anything during the meeting today?" Nothing needed to be said. He walked down the steps until he stood level with us. "The proposal really was good. Is that all?" Willow asked. "That's all." He paused for a moment before continuing. "But Willow, about your return to headquarters, are you sure you're ready?" Then he turned and left. Willow stood there for a long time, staring in the direction he had gone. "Let's go," I said. She snapped back to reality. "Yeah, let's go." This time, she didn't offer to drive me home. We went our separate ways. Wednesday, the bidding result was announced. David personally made the call. "Manager Lou, congratulations. Your team has won the East City Complex project." Willow simply said thank you and hung up. Then she walked out of her office and stopped in front of my desk. "We got it." Just those 2 words. Elias was the first to react. He slammed the desk excitedly. "That's insane." The other co-workers quickly joined in with congratulations. Makoto wasn't at his desk. At noon, news spread through the company. Axion Advertising had been blacklisted by Oceanwide Real Estate for suspected plagiarism in their proposal. David had also told Willow something else over the phone. "The similarity between your old proposal and Axion's presentation was way too high. We discussed it internally, and we recommend that your company pursue legal action." Legal action. At 3 in the afternoon, HR and the legal department were already waiting in the conference room for Makoto. The moment he pushed open the door and saw Willow and me sitting inside, his face instantly turned pale. The legal department laid out all the evidence on the table: the USB insertion records, the proposal comparison report, and the exact same typo from my old proposal appearing word for word in Axion's version. "Makoto, how do you explain this?" He licked his lips and forced out a dry response. "Coincidence?" Willow asked coldly. "And the typo, penetration rate, being copied exactly the same way is also a coincidence." Makoto fell silent. The investigation lasted an hour and a half. In the end, Makoto confessed. He had used a spare key to enter the office, guessed my computer password, honestly. Using my birthday as a password was incredibly stupid, and copied the proposal before sending it to Martin. Suddenly, Makoto exploded. "I've been in this department for 3 years. 3 years. You've only been here for 1 year, and you're already above me. Why?" He pointed at Willow. "You and her." "Makoto." Casey's voice came from the doorway. At some point, the vice president had arrived too. "You're terminated," Casey said calmly. "Effective immediately. Pack your things and leave." Chapter 17. Makoto's face went from pale white to ashen gray. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but nothing came out. In the end, he simply stood up and walked out of the room. When he passed by me, he paused for a moment. "You won, but you won't get very far." I ignored him. Then he left. The conference room fell silent for a while. Casey looked at Willow and me before saying, "This matter ends here. George, handle East City Complex properly." "Willow." He paused briefly. "Your transfer order will come through next week." Willow's expression didn't change. She simply nodded. "Understood." Casey left. Only Willow and I remained in the conference room. "So you're leaving next week?" I said. "Yeah, next week." "What about the Japanese food we agreed on?" "Tonight." She looked at me. "Does tonight work?" "Yeah." This dinner wasn't at the same restaurant as before. Willow chose a much more upscale place, a private Japanese dining club on the 27th floor in the CBD. Reservations were required. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows was the exact skyline I had once seen in her Moments post. "Do you live nearby?" I asked, remembering the angle from that photo. "Not far." The dishes arrived one after another. We ate quietly for a while without saying much. Eventually, she spoke first. "George, after I leave," I interrupted her. "Casey already hinted to me about you recommending me for the supervisor position." "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" She set down her chopsticks. "The 5 months of allowance money you sent me. I never returned it. Didn't we already call it even?" "The mug." She shook her head. "The mug was only the interest." She took out her phone and opened the payment page. "I kept the principal the entire time. $2,600. Not a cent missing." I looked at the number on the screen. "You never spent it?" "No." She gently pushed the phone toward me. "I wanted to return it before, but I could never find the right reason." I frowned slightly. "Why would you need a reason?" She pressed her lips together softly. because once I return it, this story really ends. I put down my chopsticks and looked at her. Behind her, the night view from the 27th floor glowed with the lights of the entire city. Willow, yeah. That money doesn't need to be returned. Why? I looked at her thoughtfully, because I just realized something. If it weren't for those 5 mistaken transfers, I probably never would have spoken more than 20 sentences to you in my entire life. She looked back at me quietly. I smiled. So those $2,600 were probably the best investment I've ever made in my life. She didn't move. Several seconds later, she picked up a slice of salmon and stuffed it into her mouth, mumbling something so softly I almost missed it. I think it was worth it too. After dinner, she drove me to the subway entrance. This time, I didn't refuse. The car stopped by the roadside, and the window rolled down. I can trust you with RD department too, and at headquarters, I have things to do. She glanced at the distant skyline. It's about time I dismantled Duncan's little tricks one by one. By yourself? I asked. Not by myself. She turned to look at me. I found someone trustworthy at the branch office. I didn't say anything. She continued. If anything comes up in the future, contact me anytime, and you don't need to keep sending allowance money anymore. She paused, then smiled faintly. Though if you still want to send it, that works too. I won't return it this time. After saying that, she rolled the window back up. The car drove away. I stood by the roadside, watching the taillights disappear into the distance. This time, I stood there even longer than before. The wind was strong. I pulled up my collar and walked into the subway station. Willow left on a Friday. There was no farewell dinner, no dramatic send-off. At 4 in the afternoon, after packing the last box of her belongings, she sent a message in the department group chat. Everyone, starting next week, RD Department 2 will be temporarily managed by George. Please continue handling work matters as usual, and if there are any issues, bring them up in the group chat anytime. Thank you all for everything during this period. Hope our paths cross again someday. The group chat instantly filled with replies. Take care, Manager Lou. Thank you, Manager Lou. I replied with only one word. Take care. She didn't reply to me separately. Chapter 18. At 4:30, I saw her carrying a box toward the elevator. I chased after her. Willow. She turned around. I took the mug with me. That was for you. No. I mean, this is for you. She picked up a paper bag from the top of the box and handed it to me. I opened it. It was an original hand-drawn illustration of the orange cat. A 4-sized and professionally framed. It was exactly the same as the cat from her profile picture, except there was an extra handwritten line beneath it. Third copy on the entire internet. I stood in the hallway holding the frame, watching the elevator doors close in front of her. She said, George, good luck next Monday. Then the doors shut. I lowered my head and looked at the drawing. The orange cat stared back at me with that same goofy grin. Third copy on the entire internet. The first copy had gone to Lillian. The second, she kept for herself. The third, she gave to me. I carried the frame back to my desk and placed it beside the orange cat mug. Elias peeked over the partition and glanced at it. George, what's this? Cat-themed office setup. I laughed. Yeah, cat-themed. I sat down, turned on my computer, and changed the desktop wallpaper to the orange cat. Just a little over a month ago, I had been stressing over $2,600. Now Willow was gone, leaving behind a supervisor position, a framed drawing, and something I still hadn't found the courage to say out loud, but that was okay. She had said it herself. If anything came up, I could always contact her. I could even keep sending her allowance money, and this time, she wouldn't return it. During my first week taking over RD Department 2, I thought it would be difficult. Reality turned out to be even harder. Makoto was gone, leaving behind a complete mess. The Swan brand proposal had already gone through 5 revisions and still wasn't meeting the client's standards. The client was already threatening to switch suppliers. Elias and the other 2 co-workers executed tasks reasonably well, but without an experienced veteran setting the rhythm. There were too many things I had to oversee personally. East City Complex had entered the execution phase. The client held one coordination meeting every week, and David was becoming increasingly demanding. On the busiest day, I attended 4 meetings back-to-back and only had enough time to eat bread and drink coffee in between. When I finally returned to my rented apartment at 10 that night, Luis was already asleep. I showered, lay down on my bed, and scrolled through my phone. Willow had posted a new update on Moments, a photo of the headquarters office building. Caption, back. There were more than 10 likes beneath it, along with one comment from Duncan. Welcome back. No matter how I looked at it, that welcome back didn't feel friendly. After thinking for a moment, I sent Willow a message. How's headquarters? 5 minutes later, she replied. Still adjusting. How's your side? I replied helplessly. The Swan client is about to run. She asked. Elias can't handle it. His technical skills are fine, but he's bad at managing client relationships. she replied. Before sending him to meetings, make sure the competitor analysis is solid. The client isn't saying the proposal lacks creativity, the real issue is differentiated data. I left a competitor database in the department shared drive, D drive, third folder. I checked. It was really there. A complete competitor database covering 6 years of trend data for the same industry category. When did you make this? I asked. When I first transferred to the branch office last year, I had nothing better to do. She said it so casually, as if building an enormous database like that was just a random way to kill time. At that moment, I understood a little more clearly just how lonely she must have been during that year after transferring from headquarters to the branch office. Thanks. You're welcome. Willow. What? I asked. At headquarters, is Duncan putting pressure on you? The typing indicator flashed for a long time. In the end, she only sent one sentence. I can handle it. I knew what that really meant. Things are difficult, but I don't want you to worry. I typed. If you need help, just say it. Okay, go sleep. Another 2 weeks passed. East City Complex officially entered the on-site execution stage. I brought Elias and 2 others to stay on-site for an entire week, personally overseeing every part of the community engagement campaign. Chapter 19. The results were even better than expected. The day the first batch of campaign data came out, David personally sent me a WeChat message. Conversion rate, 14.7%. Even higher than the 12% you projected in your proposal. I screenshotted the number and sent it to Willow. She replied with one word, insane. Then came a second message. George, there's something I need to tell you. Go ahead. I've run into some problems at headquarters. Duncan is pushing a merger proposal. He wants to merge your branch office's planning division into a new company he controls. If the merger goes through, your entire RD department too will be reorganized. I slowly lowered my phone. Reorganized. We had finally built something real, and now the entire department might disappear. Does Casey know? I asked. He does, but his position is unclear right now. He's under pressure from higher up too. So what do we do? Focus on your work. The better East City Complex performs, the more valuable the branch office becomes, and the less likely the merger gets approved. That's it. For now, I'll figure out the rest from the headquarters side. She didn't say anything else. I set my phone down and sat quietly in the temporary office at the project hotel for a long time. Outside the window was the East City Complex construction site. Scaffolding covered the buildings, and several high-rises had already reached structural completion. I had poured 3 months of my life into this project. I couldn't let all of it go to waste. Over the next month, I pushed East City Complex to its absolute limit. I personally followed every event execution. I double-checked every set of data over and over again. When the second batch of activity data came out, the overall conversion rate reached 16.3%, ranking among the top 5 projects in the industry within the same scale category. During one coordination meeting, David said something in front of everyone. I've worked in this industry for 17 years and seen countless planning teams. George's team is the most solid one I've ever seen. No exceptions. Those words reached Casey. Casey passed them to headquarters. Headquarters passed them to Duncan. That same week, Duncan's merger proposal was suspended. Not withdrawn. Suspended. Because the branch office's performance was simply too good. Upper management no longer had any reason to approve the merger. Willow called me. Not a WeChat voice message. An actual phone call. You saved the entire RD department too. It wasn't just me. She laughed softly. Elias and the others helped too. But East City Complex was something you carried on your shoulders. Your competitor database deserves credit too. She went quiet for a second. George. Yeah. I feel like I owe you more and more. You don't owe me anything. Then, are you free on Saturday? What do you mean? I'm coming back for a trip. Without realizing it, my hand tightened around the phone. What for? I'm taking you out for dinner. I still haven't treated you to that Japanese food I promised. I stared blankly for a second. You're flying back from headquarters just to buy me dinner? Not exactly. I have some work stuff to handle too. Then she added, while I'm at it. She always said things like that, as if every kind thing she did for me was just incidental. Okay, the same place as last time, she said, 27th floor. Okay. After hanging up, I realized I was already standing. I had no idea when I got up. Luis was gaming across the room and said without even looking over, "You're grinning like an idiot." I immediately forced my expression back under control. At 5 in the afternoon on Saturday, I arrived at the Japanese restaurant. Willow was already there. She had changed a little. She had cut her hair short, only reaching her chin now. New hairstyle? I asked. Yeah, things move fast at headquarters. Long hair's too troublesome to maintain. It looks good. She didn't respond to that. She simply lowered her head and looked at the menu. Chapter 20. After the dishes arrived, we talked about work. The power struggles at headquarters were far more complicated than anything at the branch office. Duncan didn't just control one company. His influence within the industry association extended into every layer of the supply chain. Bringing him down would require dismantling everything step by step. Does he know you're targeting him now? She picked up a slice of tuna. Of course he knows. He's always known. But he doesn't know what I actually have. What do you have? I asked. Some things. She brushed it off vaguely. It's still not enough. I'm missing one final key piece. What piece? She looked at me. Do you trust me? I do. Then don't ask. You'll know when the time comes. Halfway through dinner, she put down her chopsticks. George, you've changed a lot these past 6 months. How? You talk more now. After thinking about it, she was right. Back then, during the entire year and a half I worked under her, I had spoken only 17 sentences to her. Now I could say 17 sentences over a single meal. I smiled. You've changed too. How? You never used to ask me things like, do you trust me? She didn't answer directly. She took a sip of water. There's one more thing. She pulled an envelope from her bag. I need your help with Duncan. I accepted the envelope and opened it. Inside was a financial audit summary from Oceanwide Real Estate. What's this? Willow explained. There are problems with Duncan's investments in Oceanwide Real Estate. He used related party transactions to move a sum of money. David uncovered some leads, but he doesn't dare report it directly because Duncan has allies on the board. How did you get this? David trusts you. She looked at me steadily. During East City Complex, you built an excellent working relationship with him. He gave this to you through me. I froze for a second. Wait, he gave this to me? Willow nodded. He said if someone has to expose this matter, he'd rather it be someone without a direct conflict of interest with Duncan. He doesn't want it to look like internal corporate infighting. But you're an external partner. She pushed the envelope closer to me. During the execution of East City Complex, you accidentally discovered financial irregularities on the client's side and reported them out of professional ethics. Completely reasonable. I stared at the documents and frowned. The risks involved in this. There are risks, she admitted openly, but there are rewards too. If Duncan falls, Oceanwide Real Estate's new management will remember you. East City Complex still has Phase 2 and Phase 3. They'll all be yours. I shook my head. That's not what I care about. Then what do you care about? I looked at her. If this gets traced back to you being the one behind it, it won't. She pushed the envelope firmly into my hands. I've been walking this line for 2 years. From the very first day he forced me out of headquarters, I started preparing. Every single step has been clean. Chapter 21. 2 years. She hadn't been exiled to the branch office. She had been setting the board. I looked into her eyes and suddenly realized the person sitting in front of me was sharper than every version of her I had imagined. George, you can choose not to help. This wasn't your problem to begin with. What do you mean it's not my problem? I slipped the envelope into my bag. You spent 2 years digging a trap for that man. I spent 5 months sending you allowance money. Whatever this relationship is, it stopped being simple the moment that first transfer happened. She froze for a second. Then she smiled. How many times had I seen that smile already? At some point, I had lost count. All right. She stood up. Then I should head back. There's an important meeting at headquarters next week. Want me to call you a car? No need. She picked up her bag, walked to the door, then suddenly turned back. George, yeah. Lately, are you still sending allowance money to your sister? $500 every month, right on schedule. Positive you didn't send it to the wrong person? I raised 3 fingers. I checked 3 times before every transfer. Good. She pushed open the door. After all, there are only 3 copies of that profile picture on the entire internet. If you send it to the wrong person, you won't get it back. Then the door closed behind her. I sat alone by the window on the 27th floor, the skyline stretching endlessly outside. That document rested quietly inside my bag. And I knew, the moment I accepted it, I stopped being just an ordinary advertising planner. I had become a chess piece on the board, but Willow wasn't using me. She trusted me. What's the difference between trust and manipulation? Trust gives you a choice. Someone using you would never do that. I finished the last sip of sake in my glass and went downstairs. The next day, I contacted David. I've reviewed the documents. I'd like to meet and discuss this in person. He replied. Wednesday noon. Same place. On Wednesday at noon, I met David at a cafe near Oceanwide Real Estate. He looked thinner than last time, and the dark circles behind his glasses had become even heavier. George, let me make one thing clear first. I'm giving you this information in a personal capacity. It has nothing to do with Oceanwide Real Estate's official position. I understand. Duncan used a shell company called Jinhong to inflate procurement costs during East City Complex's construction purchasing phase. More than $20 million was involved. Part of the money eventually flowed back into his personal accounts. Is the evidence solid? I asked. David nodded. The financial data itself is clean enough to hold up. But if we go through the industry association's reporting process, the complaint has to be submitted to the regulatory committee. He paused briefly. And coincidentally, the committee director happens to be Duncan's college classmate. What about the courts? That's possible, but we need a whistleblower. No one inside Oceanwide Real Estate wants to be the one sticking their neck out. So you're looking for an outsider. You're the best candidate. He looked directly at me. During East City Complex's execution, you had a legitimate path to discover the irregularities. I can provide procurement contracts and payment records to support the case, but the signature on the report has to be yours. I leaned back in my chair and thought quietly for a while. Boss Chan, can I ask you something personal? David removed his glasses and wiped them slowly. 5 years ago, when Duncan forced Willow's father out of the company, I had just joined Oceanwide Real Estate. Willow's father, Sam Liu, was the one who interviewed me. He put his glasses back on. He was one of the very few genuinely clean people I've ever met in this industry. So this is about repaying a debt. You could say that. He looked at me carefully, speaking word by word. George, I won't force you to do this, but you need to understand something. If nobody acts, Duncan will eventually swallow the branch office whole. Suspending the merger proposal doesn't mean he gave up. Once the East City Complex hype dies down, he'll come back. I understood perfectly. This was no longer a question of whether to act, only whether to act sooner or later. I'll do it, I said. David finally let out a long breath. I'll prepare the supporting materials on my side. You write the report letter. We submit everything together in 1 week. All right. On the way back to the company, I sent Willow a message. It's decided. Submission goes out in 1 week. She replied with only 4 words. Stay safe. I understood the weight behind those words. Much heavier than simply saying, get some rest. Chapter 22. 1 week later, the report letter was officially submitted to the market regulatory authorities through a lawyer. At the same time, David submitted Oceanwide Real Estate's internal procurement audit report. The day after the documents were sent out, nothing happened. Nothing on the 3rd day either. On the 4th day, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. Mr. George? Yes. Speaking. May I ask who this is? I'm Duncan's secretary. Our boss would like to invite you to lunch tomorrow, if you're available. My back stiffened slightly. What's this regarding? The boss said he'd like to have a conversation with you. The moment I hung up, I immediately called Willow. She only said 1 word. Don't. Why? If he wants to meet you alone, then it's either pressure or bribery. Either way, you cannot meet him. The moment you do, he can claim the two of you negotiated privately. Then he'll muddy the entire situation. So I just refused directly. Don't refuse. She paused briefly. Tell his secretary that if there's anything to discuss, it can go through your lawyer. I did exactly that. 3 days later, the regulators sent an official response. The case had been formally accepted for investigation. The news spread much faster than I expected. That very afternoon, Casey called me into his office. His expression was complicated. I couldn't tell whether he was relieved or nervous. George, do you realize what you've done? I do. You reported a vice chairman of the Industry Association for related party financial misconduct. Do you understand what that means? It means he might fall. I looked directly at him. And it also means I might get targeted afterward. Casey stared at me for a long time before speaking again. Did Willow tell you to do this? I answered calmly. That's not the question you should be asking. I paused. The real question is whether the evidence is true. He fell silent. Finally, he let out a long sigh. It's true. I reviewed the evidence myself. I nodded. Then there's nothing else that needs to be asked. Casey leaned back in his chair as though some heavy burden had finally left him. George, you've got more guts than I did when I was your age. Back when Sam Liu got forced out, I wanted to speak up. He gave a bitter smile, but I didn't. I smiled faintly. It's not too late now. He looked at me quietly for a few seconds before nodding. All right, I'll support you. I'll organize all the branch office materials and send them to headquarters. The moment I walked out of the vice president's office, I knew. There was no turning back anymore. Duncan probably knew it too, because the very next day, someone appeared outside my rented apartment. It was Martin from AXION, Makoto's friend, the same guy who had stolen my proposal before. He wore a wrinkled jacket and had a blank expression on his face. George, what are you doing here? I'm here to pass along a message. He leaned against the wall. Boss Duncan says there's still room to work this out. Withdraw the report. And he'll let bygones be bygones. East City Complex Phase 2 and Phase 3 can both go to your team, with favorable pricing. So now you're lobbying for him. I owe him a favor. Martin sighed. George, let me be honest with you. You're just a small-time planner. Are you really sure you can beat someone like Duncan? I asked him. Do you still have copies of my proposal? He froze for a second. No, I deleted everything. Then you can leave. I looked at him steadily. Tell Duncan the report won't be withdrawn. And if he wants to send someone again, Next time he can talk directly to my lawyer. Martin stared at me for a long moment before turning around. After taking 2 steps, he suddenly stopped and looked back. George, do you know what kind of person Willow's father was back then? What kind? Someone exactly like you, fearless, too straightforward. His voice lowered slightly. In the end, they destroyed him so badly he couldn't even step near the company entrance anymore. And then, I asked, there is no then. He looked at me one last time. I'm just warning you. Chapter 23. Martin left. I stood outside my rented apartment and slowly clenched my fist. Then I called Willow. Duncan sent someone. Her voice changed instantly. Who? What kind of person? Martin. He wanted me to withdraw the report. What did you say? I refused. She went quiet for 2 or 3 seconds. George, you can come to headquarters. What? I applied for a position at headquarters, senior supervisor of the planning center. The role reports directly to me. If you come here, you won't have to stay at the branch office as Duncan's target anymore. Willow, if I leave, what happens to the branch office? What happens to East City Complex? We could coordinate remotely. I cut her off. You know that won't work. She fell silent. Willow, when you first got transferred to the branch office, did you leave just because someone wanted you gone? No. Then I'm not leaving either. Silence stretched across both ends of the call. You really are. Her tone changed into something I couldn't quite identify, half helplessness, half something else. You're just as stubborn as your sister said you were. Occupational disease of the Wong family. She didn't try to persuade me anymore. Then be careful. If anything really happens, call me immediately. Don't try to act tough. Okay. After hanging up, I sat down on the bed and looked at the orange cat mug on the table. Ever since the day Willow left, I had used that mug every single day. Never dropped it. Never planned to. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Regulators questioned Duncan 3 separate times. His legal team fought desperately to obstruct the process. But the evidence David provided was too solid. Every fund transfer was backed by bank transaction records. 1 month later, the Industry Association released an official statement. Duncan had been suspended from his vice chairman position pending the outcome of the investigation. The day the announcement came out, Willow sent me a very long message. George, I waited 2 years for today's result. From the day my father was forced out of the company, I knew I would eventually have to do this. I couldn't have done it alone. Thank you. I replied with only 1 sentence. You were never alone. She sent an orange cat sticker. I saved it immediately. 2 more months passed. The investigation results were finalized. Duncan was found involved in related party transactions and illegal benefit transfers totaling more than $30 million. The case was handed over to judicial authorities. Oceanwide Real Estate's board of directors underwent restructuring, and David was promoted to executive vice president. Our company secured the full contracts for East City Complex Phase 2 and Phase 3. Combined with the revenue from Phase 1, those 3 projects alone generated more than 40% of the company's total annual revenue from the previous year. At the company-wide meeting, Casey officially announced, the acting title for RD Department 2 Supervisor is hereby removed. George, you are now officially promoted. A lot of people applauded. Elias applauded the hardest. After the meeting ended, I stood alone in the hallway for a while. Then my phone rang. It was Willow. Congratulations. Thanks. How does it feel being an official supervisor? Busy. She laughed softly. There's something I need to tell you. Headquarters approved my proposal to expand the planning center. I got promoted to associate director. Congratulations. From now on, the branch office's planning division will report directly to my side. Which means, she paused briefly, we're officially in a superior-subordinate relationship now. You're the superior, I'm the subordinate. That's the reverse of before. So does that mean from now on, you should be the one sending me allowance money? She completely ignored that sentence. There's a senior management meeting at headquarters next week. I'm considering bringing you along so you can present as the branch office's planning supervisor. To headquarters? Yeah. Are you free? I'm your subordinate now. If you say go, then I go. Good. I'll book the flight. Director Willow. Yeah. I asked. Will the hotel be reimbursed, or do I pay for it myself? Reimbursed. Anywhere specific you want to stay? Anywhere's fine, as long as there's a bed. Chapter 24. There was a second of silence on the other end of the call. Then Willow said, I already booked it for you. After hanging up, I realized I was smiling again. Luis shouted from the kitchen. Talking to your boss again. This time are you calling her director? She's getting promoted pretty fast. Mind your own cooking. He laughed. You're blushing. I went into my room and shut the door. The headquarters executive meeting was on Thursday. The hotel Willow booked for me was directly across from headquarters, 5 minutes away on foot. I arrived Wednesday night. Willow was waiting for me in the hotel lobby. Her short hair looked clean and sharp. She wore a dark blue overcoat and still carried that same thermos cup. Tired after a 3-hour flight, she asked, I'm okay. Drop your luggage off first, then we'll eat. She took me to a hot pot restaurant. Not Japanese food. Hot pot. Weren't you supposed to treat me to Japanese food? I asked. You said last time that as long as there was a bed, you were fine. I assumed you weren't picky about food either. I laughed. I do have standards. What standards? I looked at her. As long as you're there. The chopsticks slipped out of her hand and fell straight into the pot. I reached over and fished them out for her. Careful, it's hot. She accepted the chopsticks without looking at me. George. Yeah. When did you start becoming like this? Like what? Like this. She vaguely repeated the words without explaining them, but I understood. I probably started changing after the 5 months of allowance money, the mug, the orange cat drawing, and all those moments of, we'll talk tomorrow, and, contact me anytime, slowly piled up one after another, until I became someone who could say things like, as long as you're there. Halfway through the hot pot meal, she asked me a question. George, have you ever thought about the future? What kind of future? Your future, work, life, family. I have. Specifically. I thought for a moment. For work. Maybe another 2 years at the branch office. Then I'll see if there's a chance to start my own company. As for life, I'd like a better apartment someday. Somewhere I don't have to share with roommates anymore. And family. I looked at her. I'm still thinking about that part. She didn't press further. After dinner, we walked down the street together. The city where headquarters was located was much larger than the branch office city. The nights were brighter too. When we reached the hotel entrance, she stopped walking. Is the presentation deck ready for tomorrow? Ready. When you present tomorrow, you'll be up there alone. I'll stay in the audience. You're not coming on stage with me. She shook her head. It's your stage. I won't steal your spotlight. I nodded. Willow. Yeah. You said you spent 2 years preparing to take down Duncan. Carrying all of that alone, weren't you tired? For a brief moment, her expression softened. I was, but I got used to it. You don't have to get used to it anymore. She looked up at me. The streetlights shone down over us, stirring her short hair slightly in the wind. Then she asked softly, and that statement, was that from a subordinate speaking to his superior? No. She stared at me for 3 seconds. Then what identity are you speaking with? The identity of the guy who sends you $500 of allowance money every month. She laughed. I thought you said those transfers were mistakes. They were. I stepped a little closer, but later I realized, even if I could start over again, I'd still send them. Do you even realize what you're saying? I do. You. Willow. Yeah. I looked at her. So from now on, will you still accept the allowance money? She lowered her head. Her fingers twisted the lid of her thermos cup once, then slowly tightened it back. Finally, she answered quietly, that depends on the amount. How much would you accept? She lifted her head and looked at me seriously. A lifetime's worth. The warm yellow light from the hotel lobby spilled through the glass doors behind her, and in that moment, it felt like the entire world had shrunk into that tiny patch of light, and her standing inside it. I reached out my hand. She glanced at it once before placing her hand into mine. No sweat this time. Her palm was dry and warm. I tightened my grip around her hand. Deal. Chapter 25. Thursday's executive presentation. I stood alone in headquarters' main conference room, facing more than a dozen senior executives as I presented the complete execution and results of East City Complex. From community engagement conversion rates to long-term brand asset accumulation. From data models to execution details. 40 straight minutes without taking a sip of water. When I finished the final slide, the room fell silent for 2 seconds. Then the applause began. The first person to clap was Willow. She sat in the second row near the aisle. Her applause wasn't loud, but it was steady. The director of the headquarters planning center, Willow's direct superior, stood up and said, the results of this project rank among the very best in the entire group. George, how old are you? 26. At 26, producing work at this level. He smiled. The younger generation is impressive. After the meeting ended, more than one executive from headquarters came over to exchange business cards with me. Someone asked, have you considered transferring to headquarters? I glanced toward Willow. She was speaking to someone else, but the corner of her eye swept over me briefly before she subtly shook her head. I smiled. Not for now. There's still a lot to do at the branch office. That evening, Willow hosted a dinner with several members of headquarters planning center and brought me along. During the meal, someone joked, Director Willow really dug up a treasure from the branch office. Willow held her glass and replied calmly, I didn't dig him up. He grew on his own. After the dinner ended, we walked together along the avenue in front of the headquarters building. You did really well today, she said. You've already said that 3 times. When something's good, it deserves to be said more than once. She walked a few more steps, then suddenly turned around to face me. George, about last night. Which part? She looked at me quietly. The deal part. Yeah, what about it? Are you sure? I answered. More sure than when I sent the allowance money. She stared at me for a few seconds, then lightly tapped my arm with her thermos cup. Then after we go back, she paused briefly. Tell your sister something. What? Tell her she's getting a sister-in-law. My brain froze for a second. By the time I reacted, she had already turned around and started walking away. I hurried after her. Willow. What? Don't walk so fast. I wasn't finished talking. What else is there to say? I looked at her. If you're going to be my future wife, then my mom needs to meet you first. Her steps slowed slightly. When? Mid-Autumn Festival. Come back to my hometown with me. Is your mom easy to get along with? My mom only has one requirement. What requirement? You're not allowed to be too skinny. She stopped walking completely. Then she turned around and did something I had never seen her do before. She leaned her head gently against my shoulder, only for 2 or 3 seconds. Then she straightened up and walked toward the hotel without looking back. I stood there in the middle of the avenue. Above me were the bright lights of headquarters office tower. Behind me were countless people hurrying home late at night. I took out my phone and sent Lillian a message. Lillian. What? That orange cat profile picture artist of yours. Is the artist called Goodnight Orange Cat? Yeah. Why? That artist might become your sister-in-law. There was no reply for a full minute. Then Lillian bombarded me with messages. What? You mean the older sister who draws the orange cat? That super pretty older sister. Bro, you actually pulled it off. How did you even do it? I replied with one sentence. Using your allowance money. What does that even mean? I'll explain later. No, you explain right now. George, get back here. I put my phone away and walked back toward the hotel. Chapter 26. Mid-Autumn Festival. I brought Willow home with me. During the 3-hour high-speed rail ride, I spent the entire trip mentally preparing her. If my mom asks you anything, just answer honestly. Don't be nervous. Sometimes she speaks bluntly, but she doesn't mean any harm. Willow kept a perfectly expressionless face the whole time. George, I've negotiated $30 million projects, attended industry summits, and gone head-to-head with Duncan face-to-face. It's just meeting your family. I'm not nervous. I glanced at her. Your thermos lid is screwed on backward. She lowered her head, looked at it silently, then quietly fixed it. The moment we reached the front door, Lillian was the first one to rush outside. The instant she saw Willow, she let out the kind of scream only a 20-year-old college girl could produce. Sister, it's really you. Oh my God, you're even prettier than your photos. Willow was completely stunned by the overwhelming enthusiasm and froze in the doorway. My mom came out from the kitchen without even removing her apron and looked Willow up and down 3 times. Not too skinny. One sentence. Willow's shoulders visibly relaxed. At the dinner table, Lillian's eyes never left Willow for even a second. Sister, how did you meet my brother? Willow answered calmly. Your brother sent me allowance money for 5 months. I almost slipped straight out of my chair. What? Lillian turned toward me. The person you accidentally transferred the money to before. So it was sister-in-law the whole time. She wasn't your sister-in-law back then, I desperately explained. Lillian pointed at me dramatically. But you never asked for the money back. You told me before that you were going to get it back from her. I scratched my head awkwardly. Later on, I thought about it and decided to forget it. My mom had pieced everything together by now. She looked at me and commented, idiots really do get blessed by fate. Then she turned toward Willow. Busy with work? Pretty busy. Even if you're busy, you still need to eat properly. Look at those arms of yours, Mom. My mom stopped talking, but not before stuffing 3 pieces of ribs into Willow's bowl anyway. After dinner, Lillian dragged Willow onto the living room sofa to chat like they'd been best friends for 10 years. I stayed in the kitchen helping my mom wash dishes. It would have been nice if your father were still here, my mom suddenly said. My dad passed away 3 years ago. Heart disease. It happened suddenly. If he could see that you found such a capable girlfriend, he'd definitely be happy. I didn't say anything. I just placed another plate onto the drying rack. Mom, what do you think of her? My mom wiped her hands slowly. I think she carries a lot inside her. She looked at me. She's a good person, but you need to support her. Don't let her shoulder everything by herself. I know. You know nothing. My mom's expression darkened instantly. Your father said the same thing back then. Said he understood, but whenever something happened, he never told me anything. And then one day he was gone, and I knew nothing at all. She turned her back toward me. I stood quietly in the kitchen, staring at her silhouette. Then I walked out. As I passed the living room, I saw Willow and Lillian sitting shoulder to shoulder, looking at Willow's phone together. They seemed to be scrolling through all the orange cat drawings Willow had made. Willow heard my footsteps and looked up at me. I gave her a small hand signal that meant, everything's okay. She lowered her head again. The tips of her ears had turned red once more. A lot happened that year. East City Complex Phase 2 launched. achieving a 78% sales absorption rate in its very first month, breaking the historical record for the East City District. When David called me afterward, he said, "Choosing your team back then was one of the best decisions I've ever made." Duncan's case officially entered judicial proceedings. The court's first ruling found him guilty of illegal related party transactions involving $34 million. Sentence: 6 years in prison. The day the verdict came out, Willow Lou went alone to her father's old company building. It had already been liquidated and turned into a convenience store. She sent me a photo. Beneath the convenience store sign hung an old faded plaque with barely visible lettering. It read, "Lou Planning, my dad's company." She texted, "I know. Duncan went to prison. But my dad's company still can't come back." I didn't say something shallow like, "Everything will get better," because some things really don't get better. Gone means gone. So instead, I told her, "Willow, everything you're building now is another Lou Planning." She sent a very long ellipsis. Then, "When did you become so good with words?" "I learned from you for 2 years, she corrected me. "A little over 2 years. 2 years and 3 months, she replied. "Counting from the first time you transferred the allowance money to the wrong person." Chapter 27. That night, we stayed on the phone for 40 minutes. We didn't talk about anything important, just random little things. She said the landscaping around headquarters was terrible. Nothing outside the windows except skyscrapers. I told her the branch office cafeteria had hired a new chef, and the food had actually become good. She said she'd drawn a new orange cat. For herself this time. I told her the orange cat mug on my desk had cracked along one side, but I glued it back together and it still worked. "Throw it away," she said. "I'll mail you a new one." "I'm not throwing it away." "Why not?" "It has sentimental value." "You're really that nostalgic?" "When it comes to things you gave me, yeah." She didn't respond to that, but the next day, I received a package. Inside was a brand new orange cat mug. At the bottom were handwritten words. Second one, "Don't break this one." I placed the old mug and the new mug side by side on my desk. Elias said my workstation looked like a cat cafe. 1 year later, Willow got promoted to director. I became vice president at the branch office. East City Complex Phase 3 was completed and officially became one of the city's landmark projects. During the completion ceremony, David gave a speech. This project took 3 years from planning to completion. Over those 3 years, I watched a team start from nothing and gradually turn an ordinary commercial complex into one of this city's calling cards. He looked toward us. From George, who rose from supervisor to vice president, to Willow, who rose from the branch office to headquarters, they proved one thing. The most valuable thing in this industry isn't creativity or resources. It's having someone you can truly trust. The audience applauded. Willow stood quietly in the crowd instead of going on stage. After the ceremony ended, I found her outside. "Why didn't you go up there?" "As long as you were up there, that was enough." "You always say that." "Because it's true." We walked out of the venue together. Outside was a beautiful afternoon full of sunlight. The 3 towers of East City Complex reflected brilliant light from their glass curtain walls. She stood right at the border between sunlight and shadow and looked up at the buildings for a moment. "George, yeah. Do you still remember the day you first transferred allowance money to me?" "September 1st. You even remember the exact date?" I nodded. "Of course. It was Lillian's first day of school. I always sent her money at the start of every semester." She smiled awkwardly. "And it ended up getting sent to me." I shook my head. "And because of that, I met you." She turned to look at me. The sunlight fell across her face, and her eyes looked unbelievably bright. "From now on," she said softly, "you don't need to send me allowance money anymore." "Why?" "Because from now on, our money belongs together." She reached into her bag and pulled out a small red booklet. The household registration booklet. The transfer had already been completed. I stared at it in shock. "When did you?" "Last week, while you were away on your business trip." She opened it and showed me the first page. Under the head of household section was her name. "You transferred it first." "Was worried you might change your mind." I took the booklet from her, looked at it for a few seconds, then closed it and slipped it into my own bag. "Willow, yeah. You really are something." I laughed helplessly. "From beginning to end, there's never been a single thing where you waited for me to speak first." She looked completely justified. "Because you barely talk with your original 17 sentences in a year and a half level. If I waited for you to make the first move, we'd probably have to wait until retirement." I laughed, really laughed, standing there in front of East City Complex, laughing out loud. She laughed too. Sunlight, glass curtain walls, a tiny red booklet, and an orange cat profile picture that had stayed beside me on WeChat for the past 2 years. That night, I sent Lillian a message. "Lillian, what now? Your sister-in-law is officially online." "Huh? What does that mean?" "We got married." "You got married?" Then came an entire minute of non-stop message spam. The last message was a voice note from Lillian. I played it once. On the other end, she was sobbing dramatically. Brother, someone finally wanted you. I'm so touched. Woo. Willow leaned over and listened to part of it. Then she commented seriously. Your sister is really adorable. Wait until she finishes crying before you say that. Chapter 28. 5 years later, Willow and I started our own company in the same city where the branch office used to be. The company was called Goodnight Planning. Willow Lou came up with the name. I asked her, why not call it Lou Planning? She replied, Lou Planning belonged to my dad. This company belongs to both of us. In the company's first year, we took on 3 projects and generated $8 million in revenue. In the second year, that number tripled. By the third year, we won one of the industry's top 10 creative agency awards. David became one of our biggest clients. Most of Oceanwide Real Estate's later projects were handed over to Goodnight Planning. After graduating from graduate school, Lillian joined the company as creative copy director. On her very first day, she covered an entire office wall with orange cat stickers. Luis eventually joined us too and handled operations. He always thought Willow was way too strict, though he never dared say it out loud. Elias followed me over from the branch office and became project director. At the company reception desk sat 2 orange cat figurines, one large, one small. Willow designed them herself and had them custom made by a factory. Whenever clients visited, they always asked, is your company mascot a cat? And I always answered, yeah, a cat that got sent the wrong allowance money and was never returned. Nobody ever understood the joke. Willow did. Every single time someone asked that question, she would glance at me. Inside that glance lived a $500 transfer, a mug, a third copy only on the entire internet illustration, an afternoon pretending to stay calm at an industry conference, a bidding war, a report letter, a hot pot dinner, a little red marriage booklet, and the entire story of 2 people. 2 years, no. 5 years, no. Every year still ahead of us. That night when we got home, our daughter bounced off the sofa and ran toward us. Daddy, Mommy. She was 2.5 years old and still a little wobbly when she ran, crashing directly into Willow's arms. Were you good today? Willow picked her up. Yes. Auntie drew kitty cats for me. Lillian poked her head out from the kitchen. I drew them myself, even though they're nowhere near as good as sister-in-law's drawings. Willow carried our daughter to the window. Outside was the skyline of the city, almost the exact same angle as the first photo I had ever seen on her Moments, except now, it was our home. She turned back toward me. George, yeah. You really got an incredible return on that original $2,600. I laughed. Yeah. Principal investment, $2,600. Then I looked at her, then at our daughter. As for the return, impossible to calculate. She turned away and buried her face into the top of our daughter's head, but I could see her shoulders trembling slightly. Outside the window, the city lights glowed brightly. The original orange cat mug, the cracked one, sat on the highest shelf of the bookcase. Beside it was the second mug, and beside that sat the third one, the tiny mug Willow designed the year our daughter was born. On the bottom were handwritten words. Third one, don't break it. 3 orange cat mugs sitting neatly side by side. I stood in the warm light of the living room, looking at everything in front of me, and suddenly thought, if I hadn't transferred those $500 to the wrong person back then, if the 2 profile pictures hadn't been exactly the same, if she had returned the money immediately, then none of this would exist now. But somehow, she didn't return it. Somehow, she waited for me to realize it. Somehow, I realized it. And somehow, after realizing it, I never asked for it back. Some stories begin with a mistake, but the best endings are the ones that turn a mistake into something right.